Welcome back to Carolina this week. Dr. Raffia Smith is my guest. She traveled to Kenya within the last month to help feed some of the many hungry people, in particular children over there.
Yes.
I've got to ask you, traveling to a country like that where there is so much poverty and so much lawlessness in parts of the country, were you ever afraid?
I was not afraid, but we did have to have some of the local people with us, especially when we went into Kibera, one of the biggest slums in all of Africa, where there is tremendous poverty, tremendous amounts of AIDS and malaria and just all sorts of diseases, where there is no sanitation, Tim, and no running water. So we did have to have escorts. There were several schools that we took food to in the slum, Kibera, and we shared with them the gospel and just shared our love with them and loved on them and played with them.
Let's take a look at some more of the pictures you brought back with you. We have a few more to show. This one looks like some kids distributing the food the reason you went.
Yes, we formed an assembly line to move the food from the vehicle to the school. So yes, and these are some university kids.
Okay, let's look at the next picture.
My cousin's husband, David Brown, when he found out I was going on the trip and how desperately they needed medicine, malaria medicine and burn medicine, most of the people, Tim, never get to a doctor, much less getting medicine. So he contributed. He's director of pharmacy at Johnson City, Tennessee Hospital, and he provided more than $2,500 worth of medicine. And I was able to take some out into the bush to this man who also ministers to people all over, and they were thrilled. I mean, you know, they probably never get medicine.
Right.
So
and they face the same afflictions we face, but even greater, tenfold.
Yes, because they drink bad water, and children who are hungry are less resistant to disease. So you're right. And if they're burned because they built many fires, then there is no solution. There is no doctor around to help them.
And the medicine goes a long way, I'm sure.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
A couple more pictures I think we have to take a look at before we're all done here.
Okay, well, try playing a game with children who don't understand English. And so the thing I thought about was the train. And I made motions so they would join me in marching around and saying, woo, woo. And they loved it, Tim. We had a huge line. These were children.
Look at the smiles on the kids' faces. They're having fun.
They are having fun. These were huge children who came from way out in the bush, and hundreds of them would come to the camp where we were, sleeping in thatched roof huts, and play with us, and we would give them, Tim, one piece of candy. And they were so grateful for that. And we would give them food and play games with them, and of course share Bible stories. But it was so thrilling to play with those children and just see their faces.
This is a highlight of their day, probably of their week, maybe of their year. Yes. Here, wow. Talk about a picture.
Yeah. This is again the Maasai tribe. The two of the university girls purchased and had shipped on their own to Kenya all these teddy bears, enough for all of the children in the Maasai tribe. I suppose they had never seen a teddy bear before, and how thrilled we were to see those children accept those and just kind of examine them like, well, what is this?
This is a tough question. What was the most rewarding part of your trip? Was it this? Was it something else?
It was that, but it was also seeing the faces of the children eating and having food that I knew would not have food if it were not for Feed the Hunger and people in America packing that food so it could be shipped to Kenya.
Would you go back?
Oh yes, I would. I have spent many trips to South Africa working with AIDS orphanages, and as in Kenya, it's like 80% in the slums, AIDS, 80% unemployment, And the ones who suffer the most are the children, because the parents die and leave those children, and many of those children have AIDS. So that is just to see the hope moving from hopelessness on their faces to the hope that they now have is such a wonderful reward.
Dr. Raffia Smith, I am proud to be a part of a community you live in.
Thank you.
We'll be right back.